Watch here how Douglas Murray absolutely destroys these anti-Israel pro-Palestinians.
First of all, anyone who uses the term genocide in this context simply doesn't know what they're talking about or is a malevolent actor. I don't know if Mr. Uyghur's travelled at all in his life, how far he's travelled, how many conflicts he's seen, but I'd have guessed none. And you clearly know nothing about this particular conflict, and you've obviously seen none of it. The genocide that you describe is such a smear and a libel against the Jewish state. If Israel wanted to commit genocide, I'm sure it could, but it doesn't. It doesn't remotely want to. And people like you and other pro-Palestinian propagandists have spent years claiming that Israel is committing genocide in the Gaza. By the way, the weirdest thing about this claim is that the population of the Gaza has grown by 1 million in the last 15 or so years. So if Israel was trying to carry out a genocide, it's either the worst perpetrator of genocide ever or uniquely poor at performing that task. None of the stats support that ridiculous claim. It's such a weird smear and a libel of Israel. Secondly, of course, you've just rattled off Hamas figures, as everyone of your kind always does. Thirdly, you said that the world cried, you said that the people like you who cover for the Palestinian extremists. Thirdly, you said that the world cried out for the 36 Israeli dead children. No, they didn't, and you know that very well. You know that very well. If you put up a poster to a missing dog in any Western city, that poster stays up. In city after city in America, posters of abducted Jewish children, including a 10-month-old baby, were put up and were ripped down by people who have been indoctrinated into hate of Jews. Nobody would rip down the poster of a missing dog, but from Dublin to Berkeley, they ripped down posters of abducted Jewish children. So no, I don't think there was very much care for that around the world.
Let me put this to you, Douglas.
Let me make two other very quick points. Firstly, you said what Hamas might do, as if it was some kind of hypothetical. Hamas showed what they do, what they want to do. It showed it on October the 7th, and its leadership, as I'm sure you very well know, said that they would like to repeat that again and again until they have got rid of every Jew. So, I don't know. I would trust Hamas's word on that rather than your interpretation of what you think they mean when they say that, and your generous interpretation of what you think that means. And finally, as for preventing a Palestinian state, it is nonsense that the Israelis have prevented a Palestinian state. They gave the Gazans a Palestinian state in 2005. They gave them a Palestinian state in 2005 when every Jewish person was ripped from their homes in the Gaza by IDF soldiers. And the Palestinian people were given a state. And what did they do? They voted in Hamas, who then killed their fellow Palestinians, never had another election, and used all the billions of dollars of taxpayer funds from the US, UK, and Europe to build terror tunnels and to enrich themselves so they could live the life of luxury in Qatar. Again and again, the reason there is not a Palestinian state is because the Palestinian leadership doesn't want one.
Okay,
Douglas, didn't want one in 1947, it preferred war, and it doesn't want one now. Firstly, your guest last night is a member of an extremist organisation, Hizb ut-Tahrir, which is banned in many countries, including in European countries. And it's also banned in many Muslim countries. It's banned in Pakistan, it's banned in Egypt, and that's because these Muslim governments recognise that it is an extremist group that has a revolutionary ideology that wants to replace government in Muslim countries as well as in... do you know... Germany.
One European country is banned in Douglas Murray. I'm not going to let you lie to the audience like you usually do. You're going to justify everything you say on this show, Douglas Murray. Right? So please, give me one country.
Germany.
It's not banned in Germany.
I just said
it's not banned in Germany.
You're not listening. You're not listening. You're not listening.
To the audience. Google it for yourself. You know, Hizb ut-Tahrir Germany, really are they banned as an organisation?
Is this Mr. Al-Andalusi? Can I just check? Because I can't see you.
It is, yes.
Is that him?
Yeah.
OK. This is a guy, he's of no significance, but he's a guy who I have seen in studios for years, spouting extreme Islamist rhetoric. Many years ago, he couldn't condemn the killing of the journalists at Charlie Hebdo. Last year, he wouldn't condemn the attempted murder of Salman Rushdie. Now he can't do this. He fails every single test. But let me get on to the question. Look, I'm not going to engage.
I'm not going to engage in a bun fight with this Islamist. Let me answer the question that Piers put to me before you try to interrupt again.
Only if you don't lie.
Let him answer, please.
First of all,
let him answer, please.
But all right.
First of all, I'm not going to keep being talked over by this Islamist blowhard. Let me speak. First of all, your first guest treated us to the first bit of mouthwash this evening by claiming that the word jihad can mean absolutely anything. Nonsense. When a big bearded member of Hizb ut-Tahrir calls for jihad on the streets of London, then they are not calling for an interpersonal struggle with the nature of the divine. They are calling for violence. And anyone who can't recognise that should be questioned about their own motives. Secondly, we've just been treated to a monologue about casualty figures in Gaza. Where do these figures come from? I'll tell you where they come from. They come from Hamas. It's quite remarkable to me that 2 months after the October the 7th massacre, the Israelis still don't know the precise number of people murdered on October the 7th. There's a reason for that, because it takes time to work out massacres of that scale. One of the striking, you know, I just don't know if either of your guests are going to allow me a word in.
Because you are lying, and even the numbers from Israel, from the IDF, which are not accredited.
No. You will,
These are your
it's
numbers.
really interesting hearing somebody who presents themselves as a moderate being a spokesperson for Hamas. So let me continue. They are Hamas figures. They are all provided by the ministries of Hamas, which is a prescribed terrorist organization. If you want to reel off Hamas figures, then be my guest, but you are not able to mislead the viewers of Piers' show by quoting Hamas figures at his viewers as if they are holy
I am not
writ.
quoting.
Third,
it's the Euro
we've been treated to this nonsense.
United Nations.
We've been treated.
It's the international community organizations.
Where do you think they get the figures from? Where do you think they get the figures from? Thirdly, I will continue to speak if it kills you. Thirdly, World War II. It is nonsense that what has been happening in Gaza has, as you said in this endless list of fallacies, that there has been more bombing in Gaza, more deaths and destruction in Gaza than during World War II. Do you know anything about World War II?
Almost,
do you know anything about World War II?
In Dresden alone,
Germany.
Do you know anything about World War II?
In Dresden alone, take one German city. Take one German city. The destruction was on a scale totally dissimilar to what's been happening in Gaza.
I'm taking
London.
very,
very interested. I'm very interested, and I will, once again, I will finish this point, even if both of these blowhards
let me ask Douglas one question.
No, it's
I will finish the point I wanted to make.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you both. Let me ask Douglas one question. Douglas, specifically about the doctor.
It is very important for your viewers to hear the following definition. The definition of terrorism is the deliberate targeting of innocent civilians. That is what Hamas specializes in. That is what Hamas did on October the 7th.
And that's what is happening in Gaza also.
Is what Israel is doing terrorism? No, for the following reason. And again, you can lie about this if you want, but do not expect not to be challenged about it. What the IDF is doing is the same manner of war as the British Army, the American Army, and all other armies in the civilized world. They target terrorists like Hamas, and there are civilian casualties. Yes, there are. But it is not the aim of the IDF any more than it is of the British or American armies to target civilians. And anyone who pretends otherwise is lying to the public watching.
One second, before I go to Douglas, Cenk, one question. You want to get rid of Hamas too, as does Douglas, as do I. If you don't do it the way that Israel is currently doing it, given that they live amongst the population, how else do you do it?
Yeah, there's an excellent way to do it, and there's the right way to do it. So let me explain. So war, this guy talks about, oh, I love war. I go to all the conflict zones. So by watching it and rooting on for more death, I know something about conflict. You know nothing. So here's what reality is. War gets you more war, but peace actually works. So when Israel did a peace deal with Egypt, not only were the Egyptians safe, but the Israelis became safer. That peace deal has held for decade after decade. So how do you do a peace deal in this case? What you do is you do the two-state solution now, and you do it with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. And if you then have a Palestinian state, the Palestinian Authority would have the credibility to drive out Hamas from Gaza. That is a realistic plan for both peace, security for Israel and the Palestinians, and driving out Hamas. The idea that you're going to kill 20,000 more civilians, 200,000 more civilians in Gaza, and it's going to drive out Hamas.
Okay, let Douglas
answer that.
Let Douglas respond to that.
First of all, I mean, your other guest, I mean, I don't know what kind of a creature he is. He's a kind of low-grade thug, as far as I can see. He's listened to nothing I've said.
Yeah, I know, because I'm Muslim. That's what we call all Muslims.
I'll tell you. No, it's not that at all. It's not that at all. I just think that you're just a very low-rent racist. But anyway, let me just get on to it. You say, first of all, I don't care about the death of Palestinian children. Yes, I do care. I care very deeply about it. But I also know that the responsibility for their deaths lies on Hamas, which has misgoverned their society for the last 16 years and now has been leading the country into being in a war with Israel. So yes, it's on Hamas, this. As for seeing wars, by the way, I just mentioned about seeing wars because as far as I can see, you're very ill-travelled as well as rather ill-lettered and ill-spoken. And I mention that I cover wars and go to wars because I happen to think myself that it's worth seeing things with your own eyes, including things that you don't particularly like, but you report the truth. I don't know if you ever even leave your own bedroom. And I can tell already that you don't because you've already said something that demonstrates you know nothing about this conflict. You have just demonstrated it in the following terms. You said that this is why we need to push for a two-state solution and give legitimacy to the Palestinian Authority. I'll tell you something you don't know because I guess you spent no time in the West Bank, have you? I'll tell you something you probably don't know. The Palestinian Authority, Fatah, celebrated the 7th of October massacres. I'll give you another fact which demonstrates you know nothing about this and clearly haven't ever visited any Palestinians in the West Bank as I have. If there was an election tomorrow in the West Bank, the reason why there isn't one is because if there was an election tomorrow in the West Bank, Hamas would win. So your idea of a two-state solution, I'm afraid you are so out of date and you really should leave your bedroom. Because in this region, nobody thinks that there is a two-state solution on the table because there is not a viable negotiating partner. But I just want to make one other main point. You have gone on and on tonight, throwing accusations out against the Jewish state, against me. It's the sort of thing you do. I know you're a sort of online pugilist and think you can run for office, and good luck with that. But I'd just like to point out that you only really get animated if the Jews are involved. And I can tell that for the following reason. I mean, your surname's Uygur, isn't it? 1 million Uyghur Muslims in China have been put in concentration camps in the last decade. And people of your ilk never really care about that, do you? Because it's not the Jews doing it, it's the Chinese Communist Party. At the moment, 1 million people who are in Pakistan at the moment, who are your fellow Muslims and who happen to be Afghan, and I don't think you care about them, do you? 1 million Afghans are currently being forcibly deported from Pakistan to Afghanistan. You don't care about that. You're not riled up about that. You're not riled up about what the Janjaweed are currently doing in Sudan, where thousands and thousands of people are being attacked by the Islamist militia there. You don't care about any of that. You get exercised and you rile up what little base you have of malcontents because you're riled up when the Jews do anything.
All right,
it's
Cenk.
perfectly obvious.
Okay.